Hey guys, are you working on a cart? Did you lose a bolt? Are you restoring a cart and don't know what bolts you need to go back with? Well, stick around. Today we're going to be covering Bolt 101. We're going to be talking about grades, strengths, everything you need to know to make sure you get the right bolt for your cart. Stick around and let's get into it. Alright guys, we're going to jump into this. We're going to make this as short and as sweet as we can. We're going to be talking about bolts, fasteners, whatever you want to call them, what you need to know. So guys, if you're building a golf cart, most golf carts are going to weigh between 1,100 to 1,300 pounds plus your weight, depending on certain accessories. Guys, when it comes to bolts, you have certain grades. Some of them are marked with colors. Most of your graded bolts will have lines. We'll talk about that. Then we're going to talk about placement and where do you want to use, say, a grade 8 bolt or a grade 5 bolt or a stainless bolt. All right, so obviously anytime you're going to be building a big custom cart and you have big tires, and you have, let's say you have a limo. Guys, any type of suspension work, you always want to try to run a grade 8 if you can. Grade 8s have a higher tensile strength. They're rated at 150,000 PSI. But what's cheaper? A grade 5 is cheaper. Grade 5s have 120,000 PSI strength. Guys, grade 5 is plenty strong, but if you're going to be building a cart with big wheels and tires, and you're building something with a big motor that's fast, hey, it might not be a bad idea to upgrade just a little bit more to that stronger bolt. Let's look at the front of this cart, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, so right here we have an E-Z-GO TXT with a Jake's long travel suspension kit. Now as we get closer in, you can see all of your main bolts up here are all grade 8. All of your bolts for your shocks are grade 8. All of your bolts for your kingpins and spindles are grade 8. Everything on the front of this cart, on this suspension, is a grade 8 bolt. Guys, that's because these are singular bolts. You have one bolt holding in this shock. You have 3 smaller bolts holding in a whole front mounting plate. You also have one bolt for your kingpin. You have another bolt for your shocks. Guys, these see a lot of stress and a lot of wear. This is a really important part when it comes to building something correctly. So once again, grade 8 hardware there. Now, does that mean everything has to be grade 8? No. I went and bought new hardware for this cart the other day. Now, if you look, these are grade 5s. Here in a minute, I'll show you how to tell the difference between a grade 5 and a grade 8. So the reason I went with grade 5s back here is I had to buy a bunch of different bolts for this cart. Now, the hardware store that I went to didn't have a grade 8 in the size that I needed. Now, I know what you're thinking, Ryan, all the other stuff is grade 8. That's true. Most of those are singular bolts holding in, one specific piece. Right here, you have a triangle pattern and you have 2 of them. Guys, that's 6 bolts. Grade 5 bolts hold up to 120,000 PSI, okay? So you're talking 720,000 PSI in strength across those 6 bolts. That's plenty strong for this cart. Would I have rather had grade 8? Yeah, I would have, but I couldn't find them. So back here on my suspension, we got the heavy duty TXT springs. I have grade 5 bolts in these. They didn't have grade 8s in those either. I went with what they had. Grade 5s for that right there, that's fine. That's perfectly strong. Like I said, grade 5 is a pretty stout bolt. You're not going to snap a grade 5, or at least you shouldn't. Okay, so obviously you might not always be able to get a grade 8 bolt. I always recommend running a grade 8 anytime you can. It is the strongest bolt you can buy, especially from a box store or almost any hardware store. But there are going to be times where you can't find a grade 8 in a specific size. It happened to me. It is what it is. So, how can you tell what bolt you have? Well, guys, grade 8 bolts come in a yellow zinc plate, all right? They're going to be a goldish color or a yellow color. Another way you could tell a grade 8 bolt is by looking at the top of the hex head right here. Okay, a grade 8 bolt is going to have 6 little dashes on it. That's how you could tell it's a grade 8. Grade 5s are going to be a normal zinc-plated bolt. Grade 5, if you look at the top of the head, is also going to have 3 dash marks. That's another way to tell that it's a grade 5. Guys, if you grab a bolt and it's got 3 dash marks, and then you also see some letters on here, don't worry. The letter is going to be your manufacturer's code. That's who manufactured that bolt. Guys, that's kind of important to know. Let's say you do have a bolt that snaps on you. You can go back and you can look up the bolt manufacturer. You can actually, most of the time, you can send them the bolt, and they can tell you what happened to the bolt. So, in saying that, grade 8, we know it's the strongest bolt you can buy. Tensile strength, 150,000 PSI, okay? That's a lot of PSI. I mean, that's a very, very strong bolt. Grade 5, these range anywhere from 105 to 120 minimal tensile strength. It's also a very strong bolt. Ryan, what happens if I get a bolt like this that has 2 sets of numbers on it? Well, more than likely, it's going to be a metric bolt. Guys, if you buy a lift kit, you're not always going to get a U-bolt. Most of the U-bolts that you get, guess what color? It's a grade 8 U-bolt. You can tell by the zinc-plated, yellow zinc-plated covering that it has on it. A higher quality U-bolt will actually have the markings on the U-bolt. Not all of them do. But getting back to the metric bolt. This bolt is a 10.9. A 10.9 metric rating is the equivalent of a grade 8 bolt. Now guys, I could sit here for another 10 minutes and go over the ratio rating and how they get this number and what that means. Just know that if you get a bolt and it's a 10.9 or higher, that's an equivalent to a grade 8 bolt. Do they make some that are higher than this? Yes, they do. You don't see them in hardware stores very often. It's not a very common strength. So, grade 8, grade 5, metric rating, 10.9. But there's another one. This is the bolt that comes with the Navitas AC kit. If you look at it, it says 304 on it. Well, 304 is a stainless bolt. It's a 304 stainless. Guys, almost all stainless bolts carry the same rating as a grade 5. It's going to be between 120 to 125,000 PSI. Most of the times when you buy a stainless bolt, they don't even come with the grade. They come with what they call a corrosion wear. 304 is a very hard stainless. Most of the times you will see bolts in 304. Every once in a while you'll catch them in a 316. Side note, while we're talking about this, stainless is very hard, okay? And it has a very high capacity to gald. Whenever you're dealing with stainless bolts, I always put either a copper coat or a silver coat. I put some type of grease to make sure that this doesn't gald. The last thing you want to do is have to drill a stainless bolt out. They are extremely hard to drill out. So, stainless, basically a grade 5. That's what you put with your Navitas kit. You should have 4 of these. That's what holds that big motor in place and holds all that torque. So, obviously, if you got a big AC motor, and it's got 4 quarter 20-inch bolts that are stainless, I mean, that's holding in a lot of weight. It's a 70-pound motor. That thing makes a lot of torque. So that ought to tell you how strong a grade 5 bolt is. All right, guys. So I hope that was quick. I hope you learned something from it. I will say this. Anytime that I am putting a rear end together and I'm doing a lift, I always look for a grade 8 bolt. Now, that is the one time that I will not go to a grade 5. If I know I'm putting a lift on a cart, I will look for a grade 8 bolt. If I can't find it, I will scour until I find the one I'm looking for. You either want to run a 10.9 metric or you want to run a grade 8. Guys, it's a safety issue for me. Most of my carts have back seats. If you've seen some of my other builds, most of my carts have big wheels and tires. I am not going to let a small liability, like an extra couple of dollars, mess with me. I'm going to buy the grade 8 and I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable about it. Which brings me to the last point. There is a price difference, guys. All these bolts that I just bought for this cart, I bought 12 grade 5 bolts, grade 5 washers, and grade 5 locking nuts. All the nuts for this cost me about 35 bucks. Had I gone grade 8, if they had had the stuff that I needed, it probably cost me another $10 to $15, which in the grand scheme of things is really not that much when it comes to safety. So guys, I hope this was quick enough for you. I hope that you learned something from it. If you have any more questions, if you want to see me talk about something else, make sure to drop me a comment, give this a like, give this a subscribe. Booyah. Make sure to share this with your friends. Hey, and if you already knew this stuff, good for you. Not everybody does. I'm trying to put it out there for you. Y'all have a good week. We'll see you on Thursday. Go modify.